Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. So, last night, Louise and I, I got home around 8:15 after the TV show and turned on the TV and said, well, let's see if we see any issues being discussed. And we watched much of Chris Hayes' show and much of CNN. We were flipping back and forth, and the first half of Rachel Maddow's show. And at that point, we had invested more than an hour and a half in watching television and not heard a discussion of one single issue. What we were hearing was discussions about personalities, about electability. I've been saying this for a long, long time. These issues, by and large, do not get discussed. Now, somebody on Twitter came out and said, hey, there was this conversation about the minimum wage between, somebody from Think Progress and somebody from Heritage or whatever on CNN last week, a 15-minute conversation about it. And I said, oh, then you win a book. I'll send you a book. I'll take your word for it that it actually happened. I didn't see it. But the fact of the matter is that, and then there's other people saying, oh, no, issues are being discussed all the time. No, they're not. Just start asking yourself the question as you're watching television this afternoon, tonight, whatever it may be. Is this a conversation about an issue that actually affects us? Are we actually having a conversation here about, the minimum wage, whether it should be raised or not, what impact it has? Are we gonna have a serious discussion about net neutrality? Are we gonna have a serious discussion about net metering, for example, the ability to sell electricity back into the electric grid that's being fought by for-profit electric companies and fossil fuel companies all across the United States? I don't think you're going to see a discussion about that on any of the networks. There's too many big interests that are into it. Are you going to see any discussion at all about the pharmaceutical industry and how they're ripping us off? No. Are you going to see a discussion about the health insurance industry and how they're, this, what is it, Cigna and Aetna, I think, are trying to merge, and the federal government is suing to block it, and now one of these companies, I think it was Cigna, I mixed them all up. They all ended with an is saying, well, we're going to pull out of some of the Obamacare, exchanges. And I think this is just like revenge for you're not letting us merge and have total market dominance and all this kind of stuff. I'm not hearing discussion about any of these things. What I'm hearing is, oh, can Trump pull it out? Is Trump crazy? Is Hillary Clinton? What's going to happen with her FBI interview? Oh my God, And what does that have to do with the election? What does that have to do with the issues? How does that affect my life? Just start asking yourself that simple question as you're watching these segments on television. How does this affect my life? What does this have to do with the average American? What does this have to do with working people? And I'm telling you, and of course, then somebody said, well, hey, Thom, you on your program, you debate stuff, or I forget the phrase, you have people on who talk about personality and who can win and who can't. Yeah, sure. This is an opinion show. I'm not pretending to be the news. If you want to see real news, watch Democracy Now! And Free Speech TV. Amy Goodman is doing real news in the tradition of Walter Cronkite, and to the best of my knowledge, she's about the only person out there who's doing it. I haven't tracked down Dan Rather's show. I know he's got a show that's on the internet. I haven't frankly taken the trouble or the time. My schedule's pretty insane to track it down. I would guess that Dan Rather's probably doing the news. But I can tell you that the news is not being done real issue news. We have a largely issue-free presidential campaign right now. You may get an issue discussed once in a while, but it is so few and far between. It is so rare. It's like, oh yeah, way back last Thursday on CNN, there was a discussion about minimum wage. Right. This is not how it should be. It should be we should be discussing every single. I'll give you a list of issues. Okay, here's the things that we could be discussing. Union membership. Should we make it easier to be a member of a union? Should we have card checks? Should the Employee Free Choice Act, which has not been brought up in 7 years, should this be passed? Should we ban monopolies? Should we start enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act that Reagan in 1982 stopped enforcing and start breaking up companies? What's the maximum threshold or the minimum threshold? How many companies do you have to have dominating an industry before you say that that industry has been captured by what is functionally a monopoly, even if it's a duopoly or triopoly? It is 2 companies, 3 companies, 4 companies that basically dominate the entire industry. They start doing price fixing. You can see this with the airline industry. You see it with the cable TV industry. You see it with the internet ISP industry. You see it with the food industry, although it's a whole lot less visible because there are literally thousands of brands that are sold as standalone brands that are all owned by a half a dozen companies. You see this in the media. There's literally over 10,000 magazines owned by 6 companies. So let's have a conversation in America about how many companies should dominate an industry before we start breaking them up. We had that conversation back in the 70s. Richard Nixon in 1971 started the wheels going to break up AT&T because it was a monopoly. Jimmy Carter finished the job. And what happened? Shareholder value increased. Bell Labs got spun off as I'm forgetting the name of the company, but it was as a separate company. Lucent Technologies was the name of the company. As a R&D and development company. Now they've all kind of merged back together again. And I've got a list of about 40 issues here that I would love to hear discussed. The actual discussion of TPP and trade. An actual discussion of Social Security and how to strengthen it. An actual discussion of how does single-payer work? Have you ever heard a conversation about how does single-payer work in Canada, for example, or in any other developed country? Every developed country in the world has single-payer or some close variation to it, except us. Have you ever heard a conversation about how that works with the details, the issues? No, of course not. Not on our media.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann program. Call 202-808-9925.
Income inequality, abortion rights, separation of church and state, tax fairness, the war against drugs. I mean, the list goes on and on.